I'm Kristi Pelzel, international correspondent for Today News Africa, based in Washington, D.C. And Vongai Chikwanda, Amnesty International's campaigner for Southern Africa, is here with us to discuss the latest on the update they've published yesterday about Zambia and the state of human rights and freedom of expression. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me here.
So Amnesty International published a pretty damning report yesterday to highlight what they're calling a worrying trend leading up to Zambia's August 12th presidential election, with the current president, Edgar Lungu, of the Patriotic Front Party seeking re-election. And the title of your report alone is a bit frightening: Ruling by Fear and Repression. I mean, that's pretty bold. So why are you ringing the alarm bells, and what's happening in Zambia?
So for many years, we've seen that Zambia has been a haven of peace. But in recent times, there have been disturbing signs that things are actually changing for the worst in country. What we have observed is that speaking out has become a crime. Opposition parties are not allowed to assemble. Civil society is also not allowed to conduct public, protest. People are spending prolonged time in detention. And these are some of the worrying trends that we've observed in Zambia. And also when we look at the ruling party, which is the Patriotic Front, when the late Michael Sata took over as president about 10 years ago, there was a commitment from his party and from himself to uphold human rights. However, over the past 5 years, we've seen a deteriorating trend in human rights situation in Zambia. And we've seen a brazen attack on human rights, especially freedom of expression, association, and assembly.
So where is the United States in all this? Because, we have President Biden, who has said over and over now, one of his main platforms is going to be to tackle human rights issues around the world. Then you have the Chargé, who's the U.S. ambassador right now to Zambia, David Young. And I went to the U.S. Embassy website this morning, and I also went to the U.S. State Department travel advisory, and it's 100% focused on COVID, with no mention of any issues in Zambia. So are there any official mentions that you know of which show that the U.S. isn't getting involved in these trends?
Well, we have not really assessed how embassies are getting involved in these trends. However, what we know is that currently there is no ambassador to Zambia since the last ambassador was pulled out based on comments that happened. So the expression or the comment that the previous ambassador made are also a sign that there's a deteriorating trend, because when he had commented on a conviction of a case involving two gay men, the government came out lashing at him. So these are some of the worrying trends that we are raising in the report, that the right to freedom of expression is literally limited. It would be good for the international audience to speak out against what is happening, and to also raise some of these issues with the Zambian government, which is what we would want to see and expect from the US government.
One of the things that your report says is that there's been a rise in levels of impunity, and a number of people have lost their lives at the hand of state actors and non-state actors. Can you define that? Who are state actors and who are non-state actors?
Yes, indeed, there has been a rise in impunity. So firstly, I would like to point out that there have been unlawful killings that have happened in Zambia over the past couple of years. So we know that when people assemble, the state then has used excessive force, which has resulted in the killing of a number of people in Zambia. In 2016, the state fired, live ammunition in attempts to disperse public assembly, and this resulted in the killing of a member of one of the leading opposition. That was in 2016. Of late, we've seen a worrying trend where you are most likely to be struck by a stray bullet. And this is in relation to a 14-year-old boy who was struck by a stray bullet on his way from school. Another 27-year-old man was also struck by a stray bullet whilst he was standing outside his own house, looking at the police dispersing public assembly. So there are chances that you will be struck by a stray bullet in Zambia. We know of a state prosecutor who had just gone out to buy his lunch across his office, and in the end was also shot, but by what appears to also be a stray bullet. And as Amnesty, what we've noticed is that in cases where the police have been found culpable, authorities have hardly prosecuted them. And the state has failed to independently, promptly, thoroughly, and impartially investigate some of these cases. And those who've been found responsible, we know that there have been investigations that have taken place that have been held by institutions like the Zambia Human Rights Commission, and found certain police officers, responsible for the killings. We know that these police officers they have not yet been brought to justice. Some have been fired, but firing is not accountability.
And where are the main human rights violations and these stray bullets especially happening? Lusaka is the capital. It's the largest city in Zambia. Then you have, states that are along the DRC border, and then you have the Copper Belt. Where are you seeing the main human rights violations and these stray bullets happening?
Okay, so it's literally across the country. One of the stray bullets, the cases of the stray bullets that we have seen have happened mainly in Lusaka and even at academic institutions. But it wasn't in academic institutions; it was a tear gassing incident where police threw tear gas into the room of a young female student, and she suffocated. But when you look at how police have reacted in Livingstone, which is in the southern province, you have seen that the police have also prohibited people from gathering and using the Public Order Act and arresting the organizers of such protests. This happened when, in 2019, when a popular artist known as Fumba Chama had organized a meeting at a church building, and the police came to disperse the meeting and arrested him. Even though they didn't use live ammunition, we can see that police do not want anyone who is perceived to be opposition or perceived to be anti-government organizing in any format. But whilst I'm still talking about where this is happening, we've also seen across the country ruling party cadres attacking or halting radio programs of people, where radio stations have hosted people who are perceived to belong to the opposition or perceived to be anti-government. Ruling party cadres have come in to disrupt programs, destroy property, and even hold, those journalists, to literally threaten journalists for hosting such programs. So we can see that the use of violence is literally spread across the country, and ruling party cadres jump in, to crack down on media as well, for hosting anyone who's perceived as opposition.
You're correct. We have seen an uptick in these kinds of communication suppression, through violent means, through destructive means, happening across the country, especially leading up to an election. But also, I'm wondering if COVID or the pandemic has put some kind of, additional strain on economies and politics inside countries that's kind of pushing this. I'm not sure, but I know in your report you also said that in March of 2020, police arrested a 15-year-old boy and charged him with 3 counts of criminal libel after allegedly posting something on Facebook against President Lungu, and he's currently awaiting trial. I Googled this. I tried to find more information on this. There's very, very little to no information on this specific case. But we know that 73% of Zambia's population has access to mobile services, and I was wondering if you knew about any kind of blackouts or internet blackouts or mainstream sites being blocked, like Facebook, Twitter, or any of that happening in Zambia.
At the moment, I am not aware of any sites that have been blocked. However, on the issue of, just commenting on Facebook, it's not just the 15-year-old boy whose name has been withheld because he's a minor. It's not just the 15-year-old boy who was arrested for commenting or allegedly insulting the president. We see that the state has used a wide range of offenses against anyone who speaks out against government. We have a medical doctor who was jailed in 2017 and allegedly accused of insulting the president. He was sentenced to 3 years, and those 3 years were served concurrently. And at a time when the country doesn't need, the country doctor ratio is 1:12,000. We don't need doctors in jail. We need doctors treating people, not being accused of allegedly defaming the president. And besides, I think that we are aware that the African Commission on Human and People's Rights has also suggested that the laws on defamation should not be has actually called for the repeal of laws on defamation. And in any laws that criminalize defamation under any guise.
This report, how will this report help to serve the people of Zambia or address bring to light some of the issues, especially with people like the UN, Human Rights Watch, and partners like that, the African Union, and foreign partners who have embassies in the country? What can they do with this report? What do you want them to do?
So with this report, we have a couple of recommendations that we have put in the report. We are calling on the government to, immediately end the crackdown against freedom of association, of expression and assembly, and to remove any undue restrictions on the right to public assembly. As I mentioned, that the police have used the Public Order Act, a colonial piece of legislation that was enacted in 1955, older than Zambia's own independence. It is still used to regulate public gatherings and to prohibit, any form of peaceful dissent. And so we are calling on the amendment of the Public Order Act to ensure that draconian requirements are removed and that it is compatible with international standards. We're also calling for the repeal of Section 69. Part of what the Section 69 of the Penal Code, part of what the government of Zambia is doing is using criminal defamation as a tactic to intimidate anyone who speaks out. And so when people see those who speak out charged with defamation or sedition charges or public disorder, they then become afraid to also speak out in solidarity. So we are calling for the repeal of that Section 69 of the Penal Code, and I think also other partners can join in using these recommendations to call for the repeal of that section. One of the things that we have also come across is that the government of Zambia has weaponized institutions, state institutions, to crack down on private media outlets. So we know that in 2016, a leading private media outlet called the Post newspaper was shut down under a disputed tax debt, and the Zambia Revenue Authority at this point was used to shut down the Post newspaper. As well, last year in 2020, we know that one of the leading TV stations, Prime TV, was shut down under the premise of national interest. And then, of course, the Independent Broadcasting Authority then said that the station did not renew their license. These are tactics that we are seeing the state using state institutions to crack down on media. And so we are calling for the amendment of the Independent Broadcasting Authority Act, that it removes all provisions that provide for arbitrary closure of media outlets. Lastly, we are also calling on, the security forces to end intimidation and harassment, arrests, assault, or punishment of journalists and others, for peacefully exercising their human rights. There are a number of recommendations in our report, and I think different actors can pull out where they feel that they can also contribute, including recommendations to the United Nations, where we are asking the government of Zambia to cooperate with the special procedures of the United Nations Human Rights Council, including offering a standing invitation to the council to ascertain the state of human rights in Zambia.
Leading up to the election, we're coming up to it. It's getting closer. It's happening in August, and some people will challenge this new update as for the timing, because if the U.S. Embassy, Charge Young is not talking about bullets flying and media oppression and dangerous protests. No one's really talking about any of this now. As we get up to the election, we're going to hear a lot of things that are bad happening in Zambia. So how is this report to be believed?
So our report, we conducted our research between June 2020 and up to January 2021. But over the years, we've been noticing this deteriorating human rights trend. And some of our submissions to the Universal Periodic Review have highlighted this deteriorating trend in Zambia. And so our report was conducted during this period of June 2020 to 2021. We interviewed a wide range of actors, from victims of human rights violations to media personnel, academia. We currently know that the state has also gone against academics like Sishua, who is being criticized for academic freedom, just airing his own opinion, and the state wants to charge him with sedition. So what we have seen, for us, we have also conducted, interviews with journalists, the government, people within the government, and what still comes out is this deteriorating human rights trend. We've also consulted part of our documentation over the past number of years. We've conducted desk research. We've looked into other sources of news, including media articles that have been coming up over the years. And of course, we've seen a trend on, attempts to erode freedom of expression, silencing anyone that speaks out, silencing anyone who decides to air, different views, using all the tactics that I mentioned, that is, weaponizing the state, using a various range of offenses like criminal defamation, sedition, disobeying public orders. We've also seen the use of the Public Order Act, to silence anyone who wants to speak out. And I guess this then answers the question, why, we are not seeing a lot of embassies also speaking out. I guess what then happened in 2019 when the ambassador was removed is an indication, was also a message to embassies not to speak out.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. And we are going to closely follow this, and we're going to follow up with stakeholders about this and try to dig deep into the root of what is happening here.
Thank you.